Hey folks, I'm back. I just ripped off my nails. Ow. Fake nails, not real nails, but they're glued to my real nails so I could play guitar again. I'm not going to play right now, actually. I want to talk about metaphysics. I want to talk about growing your other senses. I mean, we have 20 senses, apparently, and we only are taught 5. So I think it's really important to realize that there's this whole other part of you that maybe is interacting with you, but you don't realize. And so why not interact with the magic in a way that's enjoyable and comfortable? And the way to do that is to actually understand what kinds of senses there are. What other things could you be picking up on in the world around you and utilizing each day that you're missing out on? And so I think one thing that I wanted to talk about is remote viewing. So remote viewing is one of the earlier things that I started reading about and practicing for a good bit before I got some results. So what I ended up getting was I did all these tests. You can do them online. So I read this book about remote viewing, which I could probably show you. So, I mean, it's just basically the technique of doing it. And, the government started doing this in I believe the 90s. And it all started through this other guy that I read his book, Robert Monroe, and he has the Robert Monroe Institute. I don't even think he's alive at this point, but he started dabbling in astral travel, which means your non-physical self traveling outside of your physical body and exploring different, what he calls locales. So far, from what I've read, there are 3 locales, and they're a different version of reality, and there's different rules to physicality in these locales. And I've been interested in all of this because of my mom passing in 2022 in October from dementia. And I was there when she passed away, and I felt compelled to do what I've now found out is an actual thing. It's called death doula. So at the same time that I was learning about remote viewing, and this isn't even that great of a book because there's really not a ton to do for remote viewing or to learn how to do it. It's a practice, just like anything else, just like a breathing technique. I mean, it's like you take a piece of paper, you write a cross down it. On one side, it's like the feelings and smells and etc. that you get that are innate, versus on the other side is like your brain coming up with stuff, and you start to learn to decipher between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. But what I did find after practicing it and then like drawing pictures, like the picture that was hidden behind the code for, that was in the practice was, say, a sailboat, right? Then you start drawing something and it's like, oh my God, I just drew a sailboat. They show you what the picture is, and then you realize that you have a match, right? So you just keep doing that over and over again. But what I found was that once I kind of trained myself, and at the same time I was visualizing and doing light work, which I'll explain what that is in a little bit. But what I did find is that by practicing remote viewing, I was able to start getting visions. So like these downloads, this in my mind's eye. So, it's like you're here in reality, and it's like right now I'm looking at the camera, right? But all of a sudden it's almost like a sheet inside. I get this picture. It's like a memory, but it's now, and I've never seen it. And then I get a feeling. So I know what the picture is, even though I don't cognizantly know. So the example is, I had been doing a remote view session, and all of a sudden I was sitting at the table and I got this vision or download, and it was of me sitting like at this U-shaped couch with a orchid at it, and I'm kind of like looking at a view of something. And then the doorbell rings, and I get up, and this guy that I thought was like my personal trainer comes in, and I walk kind of down a hallway, and then we hug, and I'm like in the perfect shape, like I'm everything I would ever want to be looking like visually, like aesthetically. And I found out later that that was my son. And so let me get a little backstory. At the time that I got this vision, which I then became very clear it was my son in the future and myself. My son was only like 6, 7, 8 years old. So he was this adorable, slender little kid, right? I didn't know what he's going to look like as a man, but just longer and longer that I kind of sat with that vision, I just felt like that's what I knew. And so ironically, in like about maybe 2.5 years ago, my son is now 16. That would have made him about 14, 13 years old. My son got into bodybuilding. And, he went from being a little kid to being taller than me. I'm 5'7¾". Let's just call it 5'8". So, he's nearing 6 feet tall. And he's been bodybuilding for some time. And so ironically, at the time I had the vision, like I would have never even known that this, very well-built man that I felt very comfortable with, enough to like basically jump in his arms to say hello, was my son. And then you say, well, okay, well, what do you do with that, Leigh? I mean, what do you do with these visions? Well, I've had a bunch of them throughout my life. So what I did with them originally, and some of them were from dreams, lucid dreaming, and some of them were from just visions that just, boom, popped in my head, is I wrote books. I have been so freaking intrigued by all of this non-linear, non-physical stuff that really had no scientific background to when I was first experiencing it, basically since birth. And it wasn't really a thing that people talked about back then. So now that I worked at Harvard for 20 years and studying as I edited all this video, quantum physics is when this light bulb went on, and it was like, holy shit. I now have an understanding of what I've been experiencing. And so it's just kind of threw me right down the rabbit hole of going further, right? So let me tie back to Death Doula, which really was just me utilizing what I had done as a light worker. So light work is basically just like visualizing these streams or ribbons of light, let's say. And I was really stuck on a pink light. And I think that was because at the time, my mother's mother, my best friend, my grandmother, had passed away. And I was in very close contact with her afterwards. Like I was talking to her, I could literally hear her voice, not like, it was almost more like, when you're so used to hanging out with somebody that you know exactly how they would answer something. It was more like that, or at least that's how I felt at the time. I mean, I would be driving home an hour in the car from Harvard and Cambridge, trying to drive out to Revere, where I lived at the time, and it was a sucky drive. And I would just, nobody else was in the car. I would just talk out loud to her to work things out. But let's skip forward. So, and then with light work, the idea is almost like to use the energy to clear your light field. I would do things like circle the earth with light. I would go to the end of the universe and back on this light. So I started using the light work to kind of feel the boundaries of this physical reality. But, again, back to the remote viewing, I'm now realizing as I talk about it that it was really another ground, laying the groundwork for what I'm doing now, which is channeling and auto writing. And I'm really pushing the boundaries of what I can do psychically. And really a lot of it is just discerning between your subconscious and conscious mind, and also just learning how to tap in to all the information that just surrounds us every day, just like a receiver for a radio or for your Wi-Fi or for your phone. We're the same. We're receptive, and we also broadcast. So, I'm not sure where I started on that, but I think this is where I'm going to end. So we're talking about remote viewing, light work to help transition that non-physical into, from the physical body, let's say.